when we ask people to enter the space of our show that way is it activates the space.
And formally, the exhibition that everyone experiences is the same. So
Yeah.
the message there is that whatever you're bringing into it, we're all in the same suit
Same
together.
room.
We're going to be walking the other direction another day.
Welcome to Search for Meaning. I'm Yoshi Zweiback. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is one I've really been looking forward to because, hey, full disclosure, it features my cousins, Lisa Edelstein and Robert Russell. And we'll talk about it in the context of the podcast, but we just reconnected as a family. And we've had the opportunity over the last several months to spend a lot of time together. And one of the things that was most exciting about it was learning about their art and also getting to see up close and personal some of the pieces that are going to be in their upcoming exhibition, which is opening up at the Skirball at the end of this month. It's called A Palace in Time, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing it. But I have seen some of the pieces. And so first, I just wanted to say, welcome, Cousin Lisa and Cousin Robert.
Hi.
We were going to do this in person because we are all in Los Angeles right now, but the technology actually made it easier for us to do it remotely. So you're joining us from your home, which is also where your studios are. And I just want to start right with this exhibit and encourage people to go and see it because, as I said, I haven't seen the whole exhibit, but I have seen many of the pieces, and it's extraordinary. It's called A Palace in Time. And for anybody who's ever read Heschel's The Sabbath, that's the immediate connotation. Tell me a little bit about the title and how you arrived at that and what it says about the show.
Yes, it comes lifted directly from the Heschel book, The Sabbath, which I had read and was just mesmerized by. What I found most intriguing about the book is the way he talks about Judaism and the Sabbath in particular, but all Jewish ritual for that matter, as, we sanctify time rather than space. And we create meaning through these rituals of temporality versus space. And so, the palace is obviously a metaphor. And so and I just love that. And we were working out the works for the show, and I thought it would just be a perfect title because that's the effort that we're trying to create with the show as a kind of
especially the way our works sort of meet, where his work and my work meet. And how to develop a conversation between those two things. Very much about ritual and family and marks, moments in time that we mark, from holidays, life, death, celebrations, everything. So it felt like the perfect title for that reason too.
Robert, I wanted to ask you about some of the objects in A Palace in Time and their resonance for you as someone who embraces his Judaism so fully, and maybe a little bit about the journey, because you take objects like a Kiddush cup or a Yortzeit candle, and in some ways almost removing them from the context and just turning it into this beautiful thing, this object. So a little bit about that process and how it relates to the show, and maybe how that's mirrored in your own Jewish identity or the internal journey around those objects.
I'm thinking about what you just said about removing it from context, because that is exactly what's happening. And I think that's exactly what happens in Jewish ritual too, is that these objects are meaningless in and of themselves, and, particularly, like, for example, if we look at the Yortzeit candles, the Manischewitz Yortzeit candle, for example, which is just a glass vessel manufactured who knows where, with a sticker on it that says Manischewitz, Parv, done, deal. So obviously the thing is not a particularly beautiful thing. It's an utterly ordinary commercial thing. Yet when we light it, and we carve out this 24-hour period to remember a loved one, we bring so much meaning to this inert thing. And so that kind of attention that Judaism brings to objects, to its rituals, to bread, the wine, everything, it's kind of similar or analog to the kind of attention that I give to my paintings, this particularly still life, which are really overlooked objects. In fact, there's a beautiful book called Looking at the Overlooked by Norman Bryce, and And it's just about the history of still life. And there's really nothing before or since that's come out that's like it. But it is about how still life reveals so much about a culture, a time, a people. So that book had a big influence on me many years ago when I read it in grad school. And, I think of my painting practice as a kind of a ritual, as a sanctification. And so it's parallel to the rituals that I'm either, I don't want to say depicting, but that I'm borrowing from, let's say. And then the objects, the paintings themselves and the objects that are depicted in the paintings are kind of a witness to a people or a time or an experience. So that's a lot of what you'll see in this show from me.
Well, it's funny because he takes, the act that people use that take this mass-produced object and make it into a sacred moment. He freezes that in time with these paintings. It's really interesting because a lot of people who've come through the studio who are in mourning have to really stop and breathe when they look at these paintings of yurtzeit candles. They're not even the yurtzeit candles that they lit, but it embodies them with so much more. It takes the moment of actively remembering and then memorializes it.
It's all of our attention that's sacred.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And, what are my paintings, but just a record of a lot of attention paid to something very small.
And that's kind of what we discovered with it. His paintings were taking these objects, that very tactile objects. Most of the things he chooses are things that are touched a lot. And mine are really similar in the sense that it's family scenes. It's messy. We can feel it. We can smell it. Like nobody's perfect. It's not about containing the picture we wish we could remember, but like the messiness that we do remember, and that was where our work sort of intertwined in a really beautiful way.
And Lisa, I wanted to ask you about your paintings, which I've so enjoyed seeing, in part because some of them have a very personal resonance. One of the first pieces that you shared with me includes my great uncle Fred, who I actually didn't get to know personally, but I know stories of him. He was my grandfather's baby brother who died young, and he crashed an Edelstein family wedding.
Oh, funny.
And ends up in a family photograph that you ended up painting along with his wife Gladys, and it was just really beautiful to see that.
I was working on that painting when you introduced yourself to me, because we were on a WhatsApp group together, and you introduced yourself to me, and I first immediately thought you were crazy, and so I had to write my mom and say, who is this person that's saying they're my cousin? And then found out you were indeed my cousin and not crazy.
Well, it turns out, I mean,
the cousin part is objectively true. And the crazy part is we're Jewish. I mean, there's a lot of epigenetic trauma that we have experienced, so we can blame it on that. But I want to talk about this practice of taking a family photograph. Many of them seem to be 1970-ish.
They span 100 years, but I flatten them with the palette.
Well, and maybe those are some of the ones that strike me the most, because the colors and the clothing and the collars and the hairstyles take me to my childhood growing up in the 1970s. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that process of taking these photographs and painting. And I know you started with markers and then you went to watercolors, but tell us a little bit about that process, because again, hopefully people will come and get to see it with their own eyes if they're here in Southern California and really enjoy it.
Well, I think because I've been primarily an actress this whole time and a filmmaker. I think it really is an extension of that practice, in the sense that most of the images that I'm looking for are very narrative. So either somebody's in the middle of something, somebody's being caught at something, there's an unintended revelation, or there's just something about the picture that feels really universal to me. So I inherited all these photographs from my parents when they moved to Los Angeles, because they were downsizing. And even though there was so many of them, there was maybe 10% of them were images that I was interested in painting. It's not any, so that's really what I'm looking for, just sort of expanding on a narrative practice.
Have you gotten that reaction in other places where you've shown them, where people say, that's my family, you painted my family?
Yeah, and even not Jews. A lot of times it's people who have immigrant families, I think there's something about that. A lot of the people I'm painting are first or second generation. So that has an impact no matter what world you came from and brought it here. But then I have also made paintings of my cousins in the diaspora in South America. There is a painting in my show in New York that's up right now that would have just come down when this comes out. That's, I think, from the old world. Nobody remembers who they are. And that's the other thing. It's like a lot of these people are just, that nobody can claim them anymore. They're anonymous, even though we know they're in our family somewhere. And so it does feel like a really beautiful exercise of bringing them back.
Yeah, and those sort of layers of memory too. Sometimes I go back to family photographs and I don't know if I'm remembering that moment or if I'm remembering the photograph.
I deal with that because sometimes people want me to make a painting for them. And they hand me photographs that I don't think will make interesting paintings, because when they look at that photograph, there's so much in there that isn't in the photograph. It's the memories of that person or the idea of what they're looking at rather than what's actually there. It's not necessarily an interesting image. So it does impact the way we remember things.
You mentioned earlier this WhatsApp chain that we're a part of, and it's a group that came into being after October 7th, 2023. And I think so many of the people in the group now, it's grown to, there's hundreds of people there, but lots of storytellers and artists and actors and writers and producers. And I see in the chat so much of a struggle with and engagement with and a developing Jewish identity. How has October 7th shaped you in terms of your Jewish identity, and how has it shaped your art?
It's been a real challenge. And, certainly the art world that I've been involved with for, as you said, decades, which really landed, has been an inhospitable place. Well, I'll just say it, for Jews, frankly. Jews who don't pass, I think, the litmus test, whatever it may be on any given day, given any particular outrage that Israel may or may not have perpetrated. And so it's a moving target, and being outwardly Jewish or expressing any kind of Jewish identity or sensibility is pretty fraught, and particularly now. So I think on the one hand, I personally wanted to kind of dig into that and challenge that. Actually, it started before October 7th. I did the series, the Alak series, which I landed on by accident because I had painted all those porcelain teacups. This was during COVID, and the teacups were certainly not about my Judaism or anything like that necessarily. But within that study of porcelain, I found this bizarre Alak story, which I can say here just so it's in the record. Alak was a company founded by Himmler in 1935-ish, in order to create porcelain figurines, which depicted sort of Aryan ideals and notions of Lebensraum, animals and pastoral creatures.
You can see
Just
peeking over Robert's
yes.
shoulder. You can see one of those.
Exactly. There's one from that series. Anyway, so I discovered this thing, and then he, after a couple of years of production in the town of Alak, which is why it's called Alak Porcelain, he relocated the factory to Dachau subcamp and had prisoners at Dachau producing figurines of sweet little animals to give as gifts to SS soldiers. It's the most grotesque and bizarre story.
So he made these massive.
So I made these enormous paintings of these
tiny
sweet little figures, and it was a kind of a reclamation effort. It was a way, I think the gesture that I talk about it was a way to try to make something really beautiful, and the more beautiful I made it, the more effective the gesture was politically. So I thought that was an interesting challenge to make, and as a Jewish artist, it felt like a subject that I could sort of take on. Anyway,
I want to say one thing about that. Up until that time, watching his career and his journey as an artist, it was really the first time he allowed himself, because of the kind of education that he has in the art world, which is sort of leans away from meaning, and it's more conceptual than it is
Well,
about
that's it.
meaning driven. I mean, this was the first time I'd seen you do work that had a deep meaning to you in a way that
It felt
it
like
informed it.
it felt like a very precise project, as
Yeah.
did the teacups that came before it. But this almost felt like the inevitable outcome of
This
that
was
project.
personal, though.
Yeah, this was personal. This I felt in my body, and something shifted for sure.
Yeah.
Something shifted dramatically.
For me, it was already painting Jewish stuff. I was painting my Jewish family. And I remember the first time I had a show, she was worried that I only had white people in my show. I was like, well, they're all Jews. If that helps you. It's my family. So that became a conversation in a funny way. Like, does that count? And we had actually had a whole like a panel with really great artists and interesting people that have since become our friends to talk about what is Jewish representation. This was before October 7th. And then after October 7th, it became even more important to me to have like recognizably Jewish like yarmulkes, candlesticks, whatever it is that in my paintings, making sure that that was known, that that was the story I was telling. And it was crazy because I'd posted a painting, for example, of my grandfather arguing with his friends on Shabbat, and they all had yarmulkes on. And the picture is clearly from the 70s. Their outfits, and somebody decided it was Netanyahu, and it was like an entire run of death threats. Um, and that was at that point in time, I was hiding or erasing or blocking people who would do that, and then I eventually stopped doing that because I think it's important for the record to have that kind of ugliness be present forever, for all time. Because I don't think it's going to look good.
Well, back to the show itself. First of all of that is so poignant and painful, and I can only imagine what it's like to be inside of that fully. Because obviously, my world as a synagogue rabbi, yes, every now and again I confront this personally. More often, I'm supporting people who are confronting it. But obviously, in my world, like of my fellow Zionist rabbis, and in a community that is deeply Israel connected, this isn't something I have to explain ever, but I certainly have to support people like yourselves who find themselves in settings where they very much do have to explain that. But I was thinking about back to the exhibition, that it is a dialogue. You describe this as a dialogue, and your works, for people who've seen works of Robert Russell and works of Lisa Edelstein, you wouldn't necessarily look at them and see them. You wouldn't necessarily, especially if you're someone who's untrained, you wouldn't understand. Well, tell me more about this dialogue. How are they in dialogue with each other? So beyond the fact that you're married and you painted these in your home that you share together, that has your various studios, how are these works in dialogue with each other?
I mean, we've sort of been talking around it a little bit, but I feel like my objects are kind of the detritus from the rowdy scenes in Lisa's paintings in many ways, or the residue, the stains on the tablecloth of those parties from Lisa's paintings. So the camera zooms in a bit more. They're a little slower. They're a little quieter, but they're all in the same world. They're all parts of celebrations or rituals or mourning rituals or whatever they may be. But they're all, it's the stuff. It's like Lisa was saying, I do tend to, I'm really drawn to objects that the body interacts with. So vessels, drinking vessels, eating utensils, things where we physically interact with objects in very physical ways, intimate ways. So my paintings are the lipsticks on the mugs. In terms of the show itself, when you see it, I think of my works being these kind of exhales in between, and we thought of them in that way as these kind of breaks, because we did the installation sort of 18th century salon style, meaning the works are sort of floor to ceiling, jammed up one against one another, because we really wanted that sort of that excess, or as my grandmother would say, that ungepatchkid quality,
Yeah, because even when he has a few figurative paintings in there as well, but when he does his figurative paintings, they're almost all of them one color.
Yeah, they're pretty
Can't remember if your
yeah,
grandpa's one color.
they're basically one
Basically, yeah.
color.
So
Yeah.
mine are like, and
Yeah.
then his are like this
Mine are
super quiet.
willfully stoic.
Let's keep moving.
Yeah, so the show is really it really is collapsing time in the sense of, we're all always mourning and rejoicing. It's all happening at the same time. Our hearts holding all this complexity all at the same time. So that chaos is part of what we think will be part of the takeaway of the show. We invite you to choose a path as you enter, mimicking the path that you would enter the old temple grounds, whether you were graving or otherwise.
If everybody would walk into the ancient temple to the right, they would circle the grounds going to the right. There's a whole Mishnah about this. They come in, they always circle to the right, unless they're in mourning, or they've been excommunicated,
Right.
or whatever the word is. The people who are feeling alone in mourning, or for whatever reason, walk to the left. And so what it does is, when we ask people to enter the space of our show that way, is it activates the space, and it creates community
And acknowledgement.
Like, you suddenly are paying attention not to other bodies in space, which we, especially nowadays, do not stop and do much. We're on our phones, or we're doing our task.
But then formally, the exhibition that everyone experiences is the same. So
Yeah.
the message there is that whatever you're bringing into it, we're all in the same suit.
Same
together.
room.
We're going to be walking the other direction another day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about the journey from the Kiddush cup to the Yortzeit candle, and all the color and life in between. So the Kiddush cup at the baby naming, which is the ritual object that we associate with bringing that child into the covenant. Obviously, for boys, there's other ritual objects that accompany that, but for both boys and girls, it's the Kiddush cup. And we use it all sorts of other places in our lives. And then the Yortzeit candle at the end of that journey, and then all the color and all the life and all the scenes and everything in between. It really is beautiful. I can't wait to see it in person. I want to just close with something that you're working on right now that excites you. Obviously, putting these shows on is a different muscle and a different skill set, and you have people you collaborate with who help you figure out, how does it all go together, and which pieces are in the show, and how will we hang it, and all of the collateral that surrounds it in terms of the descriptions, et cetera. There's a lot of creative work that goes into that. And along the way, I know from a couple of texts with Lisa, you were sharing that painting you were working on that featured my mom and grandma and grandpa. So you're still painting, you're still working on things. What's something more recently that's really captured you, excited you, part of your creative energy right now?
Well, I started something called the Archive of Nothing. It's archiveofnothing.org, and I think of it as a digital secular Geniza. In short, what it is, I've been using eBay for many years as source material for still life paintings, and I've just been drawn to, how people will take these very unself-conscious photographs of objects that are utterly neutral, little teacups, little benign objects for a few bucks that they can't seem to get rid of. And so I think they've created the ritual through eBay of finding people out in the world to kind of become the custodian of these objects. So I indirectly took that call and made still life paintings of these objects. But then I wanted to be intentional, so I just created a website myself, Archive of Nothing, and it is just that. It's a place for people to upload images of things that they can't get rid of, nor can they keep necessarily.
And they have no value.
And they have no value, but
like your father's digital clock.
any number of things. And at some point, I might want to have a physical Geniza, but
No.
my wife is not
No.
really thrilled with this
Do
idea.
not send your things.
Sharon Browse, when I spoke to her about it, she said, "Do you want to do our Geniza?" And that sent me into full-scale panic. But so right now, it just exists in digital form. And from those uploads that I get, I'm making still life paintings. And it's a way to just kind of hold attention, hold these objects.
Now, again, I'm thinking of all those layers, like, God forbid anyone would ever take a Robert Russell painting and put it in a Geniza someday. But we're we're all eventually going to the Geniza. Like it's for all of us, it's going to happen. And so, so there's this object that then someone digitized and uploaded, and then you painted it. And in in the multiverse, some story in the future that gets recycled too. It's like everything else in the universe.
Right.
So, Lisa, what about you? What's something that's exciting you right now creatively?
Well, creatively, I just this is so in the weeds, but I just flipped over some canvas and started working on the wrong side and love it. The painting that I made of your mom is just that, and I'm very excited about how that looks to paint on raw canvas with watercolor, which is strange use of materials, but I just love the way it looks. And then working on an indie film that I'm going to start shooting not long after this show opens, and getting ready for season 2 of Long Story Short, which is the cartoon I'm on Netflix. So it's a busy time. It's really beautiful. We're sort of weekly kind of stressed out. But then it's actually like all great things. Even if it's great things, sometimes the pace is, I don't know why everything decides to happen all at the same time, but that seems to be the way things go. There's a time for your fields to be fallow and a time for them to sprout.
Well, Lisa and Robert, thank you so much for your time. I'm so excited to see the show, and I'll put in the episode notes all the information about the upcoming Skirball show and places that people can access your art digitally if they're not able to show up in person. I'm really, really incredibly, I feel so grateful and so lucky that we connected. And it was nice because you've gotten to meet my brother and my sister and my dad and our spouses.
It's a whole world of family. It's so awesome.
A whole new world of family. And, sometimes people can probably relate. Sometimes you do connect with long lost family and you're like, ooh, and I hope you're not feeling that way about us. We're certainly not feeling that way about you.
This is all bonus.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Yoshi.
Bye, Yosh.
Well, that's our episode. Thanks for listening to Search for Meaning. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps others discover the podcast. And consider sharing Search for Meaning with a friend. They might appreciate the insights and inspiration found here. Special thanks to our producer, Amy Shelby, our editor, Josh Sterling, and our production coordinator, Raz Husseini. Our theme song was composed by Maestro David Cates and myself, produced by Kenley Mattis, and features a vocal by cantor Josh Goldberg. Stay healthy, stay hopeful, and stay tuned.